Well, let's show some alternatives. Show you some eco yards. This is a thyme lawn, T-H-Y-M-E, so the thyme plant. So you just plant some perennial pots and they will spread out eventually to cover an area. And when you walk on it, it smells really nice. And you can also, if you're cooking Italian dinner, you can just go out and use some. That's in a backyard in Calgary. This is an example of a small yard. It was my friend's yard, and they had chopped the yard up quite a bit, and it was really hard to mow it. So they kept buying new lawnmowers, trying to make it easier. And I said, well, why don't you take out most of the grass? So what we did here is we created a little woodland bed. So we covered, I can't remember if we dug out that sod, we might have. Now we usually cover with newspaper, but in that case, it's a very small area. I think we might have dug it out. But regardless, we put in other kinds of plants that would spread out. Ferns grow really well in a shady spot like that, lilies, and covered it with wood chip mulch. So wood chip mulch is what nature does in a forest, right? The branches drop and decompose the leaves, and what it does is it prevents weeds. And usually you want to put it 4 inches thick. Lots of times near plants you can't put it that thick, so as thick as you can. And it holds in the moisture, and it's organic matter. So it's decomposing and adding organic matter, feeding your plants also, making the soil more rich.
Did you put newspaper down?
In this one, I don't think we did. I'm going to show you a lot of examples of newspaper. This yard is all native bushes, berry bushes. I can't remember exactly what kind of bush. And then they planted some yucca, which are very hardy desert kind of plants, a little mugo pine there, and they planted only 12 wild strawberry plugs, and that fills up that whole bed. So you can see how it looks a bit reddish. Pardon me. That's the leaves of the wild strawberries. This is a nice yard in Dalhousie. I didn't do this yard. But she's used a nice mix of different kinds of shapes of plants and foliage colors. And that's a south-facing front yard. And the plants do really well, and it looks really good in the winter too. This is a front yard where they planted all trees. So they got low juniper bushes and tall trees. And I really love these people because they left a dead tree. You can't see it, but that's a great habitat for birds and insects. Nature leaves dead trees up too, right? Nice little yard. They've got some mixed colors of foliage there, things that are hardy in this climate. And they did leave a little lawn too, and they have a little rock river that takes the water from the drain spout into the rest of the yard. This is a vegetable garden. And I love this because it's near where I grew up in Calgary. And there's 2 or 3 vegetable gardens in the front yards in the street now. And it was all lawn when I was a kid. It's either the yard next door or the same yard. Planting beans and carrots, beets, and flowers. This is a vegetable garden in Portland, Oregon. So they've got some raised beds and then hoops so they can put protective fabric to keep the bugs out, keep it warm, and got nice flowers. And I believe probably that mesh fence is good at keeping out the rabbits. This is in Calgary. They've got some ornamental kale that tastes great and a little squash down there in amongst the hardy plants. And that's a wonderful house too. It was one of the first earth houses in Calgary. They built it under the ground. It's in Killarney in Calgary. This is near me in Silver Springs. So people often ask, what can I grow under spruce trees? And you can grow ostrich fern. And they like the acidic and they're pretty good in the dry. The other plant there is lady's mantle. And I don't plant it as often because it spreads so much. Most of my clients want low maintenance yards. But it does really well in that situation. This is a front yard in Calgary. It's used as an office building, but they have planted low bushes, a whole bunch of different kinds, and some flowering perennials. This is the other side of the yard. Near the door, just for color, they have some pots with annuals that they plant every year. That very first yard I showed you with this triangular bed and the mix of plants, this is a great yard in Calgary. It's a whole corner lot, and there's not an inch of grass in this yard. So the whole front is native wildflowers or cultivars of native wildflowers. And the backyard apparently is also with vegetable gardens. And they have wood chip mulch down. And this one is a little bit more work. When things are taller, you have to cut the stalk sometimes. But they just do a bit of pruning in the spring. Otherwise, they let things go. That's the same yard. That's a nice native sage, silvery leaves. The same yard again. This is a potentilla, which is a bush that's native to the prairies in this area. And I believe that's a cultivar that just grows a bit lower. So sometimes people think they look a bit scraggly, the native ones, so I plant those a lot for my clients. And that's a rose bush that is a native cultivar also. And then some different grasses that are pretty ornamental. This is a wildflower meadow. It's not in someone's yard, it's in the wild. But it's another option for an eco yard. We've done this in an acreage. We haven't yet done it in an urban yard. And bylaw says you can do it as long as you maintain it. Just a few samples. My friend at Wild About Flowers, who sells native flowers, seeds, and plugs and pots, gave me these pictures, lent me these pictures. So that's what our front yard could look like. These are some shots from Portland, Oregon. I was there in March 2010, and they have been really promoting eco-friendly yards, less grass, and particularly keeping the water on the yard, because in Portland, Oregon, they have too much water. And what happens, they're rebuilding their sewer system, but when the storm sewer system gets overloaded, the regular sewer system, they're somehow linked and it all runs into the river. So they don't want a load on their storm sewers. They want water to get soaked into people's yards. So they're promoting rain gardens, areas where the rain comes off the downspout and stays in the yard. So water-loving plants. I'll show you a few other examples. And what they call bioswales. I'm going to show you some examples of that too. This is a really interesting yard. I'm going to show you a few pictures. And a friend of mine who's a landscaper in Portland showed me this yard. She said, I'm going to show you my favorite yard. So this is it. Back here is the chicken coop. And in many urban yards, chickens are, you get your own eggs, right? And in most cities where they allow that, they don't yet in Calgary, I don't know about Airdrie, you only have hens, right? So you don't have the rooster crowing, waking everyone up. But chicken manure is really great for your garden, so it's a way to get more nutrients in there too. And you see how it's a woman who manages this yard. She has all beautiful flowering plants outside and inside. This is a close-up from the back of the chicken coop with the mesh, and she's planted every square inch inside and outside this yard. I think I'd be a happy chicken in that coop. It looks so wide open. This is more towards the front of the yard. And this is the poetry corner. So she posts poetry on this board and then has a little place you can leave your comments. It's like a neighborhood Facebook in person. This is what we call an espaliered tree, which just means a prune flat. So you can grow it in a really narrow spot. This is probably an apple tree or a crab apple. And they were all the rage in Portland. You can buy them in pots in the nurseries, and people had them on their balconies and such. So we'll no doubt get that in a few years here. This was her front yard inside the wall. So she has raised vegetable garden and wood chip mulch around it. The boulevard here is also planted, and this is a little wattle fence. You just take branches and weave them, probably to keep out rabbits, I'm guessing. And it looks like she's got cabbages or something there. And somehow grass, clippings, I don't know where she got those because I don't think she has any lawn, but she's mulching there to keep whatever, I think it's more vegetables that are growing there. So my landscaper friend said she'd asked the woman whose yard this was how much work it was. She said, I don't know, 10 minutes a week, but I like it. I'd like doing it. So I think maybe it's a bit more, but in terms of the maintenance, that she hardly spent any time because it was so well designed and managed. Those were some examples of eco yards.